A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Beautiful Monday morning. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Welcome to the show. It's another week of activities. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Okay, so we're going to go right in and take a look at how the dailies, how did they come out today? Oh, yeah, some of you could guess already. Look at Nigerian Tribune. SARS banned fourth time in 4 years. They didn't waste any time to remind the authorities that you've done this before. Not once, not twice. 4 times in 4 years. Police violations of human rights unacceptable, annoying. Oshimbajo. Delta victim not shot by SARS, didn't die. That's Kiyama. So, over the weekend, this news broke, made a lot of rounds. And yeah, quite a number of people lent their voices to it. And then the government took that decision, the IGP announcing that ban. So, but as you see the front page here reflecting that it's a 4th time in 4 years that they are going on with this particular scenario here. So this is what we're just going to see how this will eventually turn out as it were. So that's a big one on the front page. As though that's not a handful, look at what's at the bottom strip if you can. NASU, SANU commence strike today. Lupeng, Pengerson direct members in Chevron to shut down operations. So another force majeure. And so you see this is it's going to be a big one today, really, for a lot of other places. You'd have thought that, well, don't forget as well that in different states, remember, including the FCT, schools are supposed to have their gates open.
Oh, yeah.
So now that you've got this one, what a timing that is. And then, well, also related, you take a look at this one and above this lead story. How FG states lost 1.5 trillion naira to ASU strikes since 1999.
1.5 trillion naira.
Yep, and this is, they say it's ascribed to an investigation, perhaps by the Tribune today. So, there you go. Lecturers spent 48 months at home while fighting to keep tertiary institutions alive. So that's ascribed to ASU. So clearly you see the opportunity cost, you see the cost, you see the effect, the impact.
I really don't think we should be talking about this for so long because it is frustrating. Forgive me, guys, I'm going to go back in time. During the Babangida government's reign in the 80s into the 90s, ASU went on strike for very prolonged months to the extent that lecturers, medical practitioners, those were the days where brain drain really started in Nigeria. It was massive. For us to not have solved those problems until now and to be having this and it seemed like, you know, no one is looking at it or thinking it is serious enough, I don't even think we understand the long-term effect of this on us.
Well, I wonder if government will say they're not doing anything about it. Remember, recently the Minister of Labour did say the case of ASU will soon be addressed and that they're doing something about it. So governments after government will tell you, look, we are doing what we can.
Exactly
but
my
the
point.
Results from 1999 till date, this is what you see.
Exactly the point that I'm making. And it dates back many, many years. When are we going to put an end to it altogether?
So it will be a big one. But you know, the private universities are there. So, and then if you also look at the cost of all of this, perhaps it may be reflected in some part of this investigation. How much Nigeria is spending. Look, don't even go to Europe. In Africa, in neighboring countries, African universities, in terms of how much resources is going into all of those things from Nigeria.
And it will shock you to know that some of these universities are not even accredited.
Yep.
You know, some of the students come back and they're struggling to even regularize and normalize their certificate with what is obtainable in Nigeria. So you wonder, is it because they look around and say, I don't quite trust Nigerian universities. If I enter for a 4-year course, it might become 6 years.
Which has happened before.
time and again. So how about I just go to this school? Yes, I'm not quite sure if it's accredited. For 4 years, I'm certain I'll spend 4 years there. I know that there are lots of sides to this argument, but it just shows how much we have lost as a result of this.
And, to make it worse, remember Google, we talked about this some months ago, how they looked at the operating environment, the research environment in Nigeria. They didn't situate their AI center in Nigeria. They took it to a neighboring country, Ghana. So it tells you that, look, we need to do something, look inwards about not just education, because look, this is the bedrock of development. No matter how you do, they bring a lot of development. We talk about manpower, human capital. It's all predicated on education. And if the foundation is faulty, your guess is as good as mine, maybe better. Well, look at this other one. Every terrorist in Nigeria, their sponsors will not see New Year as subscribed to Adeboye. So that's Tribune this morning.
Well, next is New Telegraph. And the big story, as you'll expect, rights violation and extortion. IGP reads the Riot Act. Let me show you the riders. Bans FSARS, IRT, other squads from patrols, checkpoints, forbids operatives wearing mufti during operations. Outlaws unauthorized mobile phones and laptop search. I wonder how many times we've heard this. Oshimbajo Atiku Sanwo-Olu condemn police brutality. And some will say, well, this is not the first time we've heard such condemnations. But you know what? More details on page 3. The big question is, what will be different this time? I mean, you saw the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. 4 times SARS has been banned in 4 years. And I mean, we still have this same thing. In fact, some say it's worse right now. So we'll see how this will be a game changer. Really, a lot of Nigerians are looking forward to what will change, seeing the action that has been taken by the IGP and, of course, the follow-up from the Vice President and what have you. But still on the front page, terrorist sponsors won't see 2021, says Adeboye. Amen to that. Warns against foreign loans, laments Nigeria's bad roads, and he spoke about restructuring also, and it was a major one.
A mathematical solution, by the way.
Oh yeah, especially because he has a mathematics background, of course. But you see more details on page 6, and there's been a lot of people calling for religious leaders, to weigh into the polity. I mean, let's hear your thoughts, because you have so much influence. Let's hear what you have to say about this, because the government, you see time and again, listens to religious leaders. So time and again, you've seen some of them coming out to speak about issues. So this is the latest we have from Pastor Adeboye. More details on page 6. But right on top of that lead story, you see presidency mocks opposition over botched labor strike. The way that is couched makes you want to read that story. You see on page 8, and you see this one, present political structure no longer sustainable. It's coming from Fayemi, the governor of Ekiti State, and of course, chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum. So what is the proposal? What are we going to do about that? Well, we'll see if page 6 captures that. A couple of other stories really on the front page of the New Telegraph. World Bank tasks central banks on reserve management. But I'll let you do the picking this morning. That's the New Telegraph for you.
News Direct also is interested in the FSARS ban. IGP bans FSARS, other police tactical scores from routine patrols. That's the lead of News Direct this morning, and has, of course, a number of riders. Simbajo, Sanwo-Olu, Wizkid, others react as police arrest 2 FSARS operatives, 1 civilian accomplice in Lagos. News Direct this morning, that story continues on page 4.
Civilian accomplice. How does that work?
Well, it's like saying there is no masquerade without a human being.
Oh, civilian accomplice. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that... But you know what? I mean, because it's the police. You arrested the police and you have accomplice of the police who's a civilian.
You know, we hear that sometimes police have civilian informants. So...
Oh, goodness.
All right, well, a number of other stories you'll find on the front page, including this one. Cyber security is everyone's business, Dambata says, as 2020 Cybersecurity Awareness Month kicks off. Banks shun borrowing from CBN for forex trading. Borrowing drops by 71.7% in quarter 3. Banks do not need cash. Beg your pardon. Banks do not need to access SLF of CBN. That's according to an expert. That story is on page 2. That's the news directory.
Okay, take a look at Vanguard next. Restructuring. Governors lament, say system not working. Okay, it's more than 4 times in 4 years now. Because I mean, sometimes when you see these kind of headlines, the basic questions you ask yourself, look, governors. So first thing is there's governors forum.
Yeah.
And then governors, and then the members in the National Assembly.
Oh, absolutely.
So if they feel this is not working, look, I thought it's a pretty simple thing. Have a conversation with your members in House of Reps. They listen to you. Because, look, the examples, when they wanted to do something about the local government autonomy, you all know what happened. So they got results in that regard. Why is this one different?
So is this an indication that maybe they feel helpless? It doesn't seem as though the National Assembly might work, or this is just trying to carry the people along.
Oh, perhaps according to the governor, I think it was the governor of Ondo State when we engaged him, there is no consensus among the governors.
Concerning restructuring. But there was consensus for local government autonomy.
Was there consensus for local government
It
autonomy?
didn't go, it fell through. It didn't succeed.
Eventually.
When they were amending the constitution, they blocked it. It didn't work. Where did that consensus come from?
I think that's the beauty of democracy. I mean, they didn't have their day, of course, but they will have their say. So this is having your say, even though,
Yeah, but the thing is, if governors are the ones who are just going to have their say, then you know that, whoa, there's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
Because, many have referred to them as, look, one of the most important pressure groups in the country, if you could regard them as such. So if they want certain things done, they have ways, maybe if they have a consensus. But the writers now add, if we don't rejig to favor citizens, it will consume us. Say we aren't elected to pay salaries alone. Clamor for more powers, funds. Only restructuring can save Nigeria. And gentlemen, don't forget, we ran a poll the other day. Over about 11,000 people participated in that. And then over 60%, about 68% said, look, they needed them to include that restructuring in the constitution.
And referendum.
Referendum, I beg your pardon. They wanted that bit in the laws so they can exercise certain things if they want to. And it's not exactly new in this country. We've had that before in the history of Nigeria.
Oh, yeah. And my challenge also is calling for that referendum. Yes, it might be in the Constitution, but how? Because you have provisions in the Constitution. But when it's time to put them in motion, you see foot being dragged and you wonder, it's right there in the Constitution.
I think that's really the issue with the whole talk about restructuring. It's not the what to do. It's usually the how. You know how long it took us to come to the point of having that confab report? Now, the next thing is implementation. I think that's where we usually have an issue.
But when we had the regions created in the history of this country, it was via referendum. And so certain things happened.
And
it
you know,
it's not strange to us.
And a lot of people will tell you they did very well then.
Yeah, it was when the military came in, began balkanizing the states, and then took away so many things. Started creating states unilaterally, as it were, and then we find ourselves in this scenario. So things can happen.
What happens to people still calling for more states to be created?
Subject it to a referendum and see what happens.
All right, see if there's a consensus, right?
If there will be no amalgamation of states.
Oh, goodness. Well, next up is Leadership newspaper. The big story, 1 trillion naira insurance target. Now, FG asks states to adopt 5 compulsory policies. Recall the previous one was about states, speaking to the government at large. But this is FG now asking states to adopt 5 compulsory policies. You wonder what this is about? Well, the writer says Lagos, Ogun, Kaduna Domesticate Insurance Act 2003. So, this just talks about insurance and the operationalization. We can go on and on about how insurance
absolutely
is not really a thing in Nigeria.
Here. It's very important. We all talked about how it is that what you see on the roads. You can imagine the accidents, the rage, as a result of people just having their destiny in their hands, feeling no system, I don't have any support structure, no insurance whatsoever to support me. So they are usually apprehensive on their toes. And so as a result of that, so many things we know happens on the road. So if we get insurance right in the country, look, is it health? There's so many things,
Well,
really.
yeah.
But there you go.
Maybe the road rage will reduce then. Maybe.
Yeah, you never know.
Well, in case you're wondering what those 5 compulsory policies are, it's on page 4 of the leadership this morning. And right beside the big picture, Labour thwarted opposition's plot to unleash anarchy. It's coming from the presidency. So it seems Labour has been dragged into politics. Well, they ask you, I think Labour was always
How many
involved
weeks more? How many days more now? It was 2 weeks Labour.
to that strike?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think a week has elapsed. So we have
So-
1 week to
So
go.
it will be Monday next week then? Or was it? It was called off on Sunday.
Well, they didn't say they would resume that strike categorically. They just said we suspended it to, you know,
Yeah.
look at some of the issues and
Yeah,
all that.
So
So-
if they're not satisfied with what the committee comes up with, what next?
Because, yeah, clearly it's not that any of those issues are going to be decisively addressed. Maybe what Labour is looking for is, okay, let's see some political will, some action, happening and all of that. Fine. But how much of that can be done within these 2 weeks, 7 days to go, so to speak?
So let's be honest. The president said, well, it doesn't make sense for petrol prices.
That's
to
his
come down.
position, clearly.
So, I mean,
So put that out
we
there.
can put that to rest.
So if you want to go on strike, you better know what you have to do, because that is the position.
And electricity tariffs also. I mean, discos have been calling for this for a long time. They say that this is tied to them even metering people, providing the equipment and infrastructure, basically. So let's be honest, really.
I think
I don't know.
it's clear that the fuel subsidy thing, if indeed it has been removed, I think that has come to stay. It's just for some of the questions we raised with the Minister of State for Petroleum last week, which was that look, the structures that sustained the fuel subsidy regime, those structures need to crumble. How those structures will need to crumble, he predicates it to, or he ties it to the PIB law. That's on the one hand.
Which won't be passed tomorrow.
Which wouldn't be passed maybe in the next 7 days either. So that one is there. The electricity tariff thing, I think a number of people, including the President of the Senate, have been calling for a review of the entire thing. We have a very dynamic, complex, so to speak, power supply system, and we keep coming up with structures to try to manage it. Is it strong enough?
By the way, NEC did direct them to revert to the previous ones, but as we speak, believe me, that hasn't happened.
Well, so
in
I
a
think
lot of areas.
Some discos said they have.
Many
So-
say, no, it's one thing on paper, but what we're
In
seeing
reality.
here,
Oh, yes, we got that mail last week.
yeah.
Someone saying, well,
So-
it hasn't happened, so.
There you go.
Well, the writer to that story says, President won't succumb to threats, undue pressure, end corruption in oil management. PDP fires back. So we have the PDP and the APC and Labour right in between, and Nigerians are watching. We're here. A couple of other stories. Nigeria has over 30 trillion livestock assets, according to Minister. Begin to crunch that figure. I mean, imagine the value chain. If I have 30 trillion livestock assets, imagine the value chain, the jobs that will be created. So the question is, what are we doing with that? Well, let's leave it there for leadership this morning.
The Daily Trust newspaper is also interested in what we just talked about now, which is discos and electricity supply. 1 month after tariff hike, discos reject 1.5 billion naira worth electricity. We have capacity to deliver more power. According to Gencos, we're committed to improving services. That's discos. And consumer groups want a stop to tariff hike.
If you dig down that lead story, you'd see that tariff rates. Discos will say, well, that's one of the reasons we have to reject this. We don't have enough infrastructure, we don't have enough funding, so we don't have enough capacity to take on, these loads. So
I think we all know one thing. The consumer is not interested in the grammar or the dynamics or the complexities that will bring power to their homes. What's important is let there be light. How that happens, I don't think.
Wow.
I don't think the consumer is really interested, but they just want it on very, very reasonable terms. I mean, it's a fact, right? I mean, we all know this.
Because of the
Reasonable,
gross
clearly
darkness that
subjective.
is really pervading.
Yes, because of the gross darkness.
Goodness.
All right.
Of course, the graphics and the infographics you have on the front page there also point to some of the issues that are being raised there. Right under that one, the IGP ban on FSARS is also right there for you. Right above the lead story and under the major headline, IPs, NASU, SANU begin nationwide strike today. I want to imagine how many, how much talk has gone into that. APC has not abandoned restructuring. That story you'll find on page 44.
All right, take a look at Abuja Inquirer next. School resumption on easy calm as FCTA remains silent. Parents worried over short notice. Half tuition on resumption. Sources.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
I'm sure you want to take a look at this now and see.
So no tuition, no resumption, or is that what it means?
That's the thing now. The sources are telling them half tuition on resumption. Does it mean they have to pay half of it?
Oh, half?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
You pay half before you come in, or they want them to pay half, whichever way. Look, just read it and put it in proper context. Then you have, just above this one, Mena Ndume in panic as ex-pension boss absconds. Oh dear. There you go. That's the Abuja Inquirer today.
Let's quickly take you through Daily Times. The Daily Times leads with, well, let me start from the big picture on the front page. That shows the celebration at Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary celebration in Eagle Square, Abuja. So you can see that. Amidst
a year-long.
Oh, yeah, a year-long celebration. So this kick-started that celebration. But on top of that, you see APC PDP trade blame as gunfire rocks Ondo again ahead of polls. So you see that's not related to the big picture. There's no celebration in that one. And it's a major cause of worry because how many days to the election? 5 days to that election. And we still have this sort of, rhetoric and, of course, the violence. So it's important. Are we going to have a peace accord? We look forward to that. But more importantly, we look forward to the parties holding to the tenets of that peace accord. You see that story about IGP banning FSARS, but you might know them as SARS because the campaign is End SARS now. I don't think people change it to End FSARS now, but that's what you have, the latest on that. And merit should determine government appointment, says Oshimbajo. Again, that comes up. So what happens to federal character, which is meant to help balance things? It's a lot, really, but that's a daily.
You mentioned that your federal character thing in that discourse also yesterday. Daily Independent this morning is about controversy trails scarcity of international passport booklets. What that is about, you want to find out. The writers indicate PCOs accused of charging each applicant extra 5,000 naira. That's for the passport booklets. We have enough booklets nationwide. That's according to the organization, Nigeria Immigration Service. Find out on the front page of the Daily Independent this morning. That story continues on page 28, among other stories that you would have this morning. And of course, right under that one, banks loan rises by 3.5 trillion naira on CBN intervention. Well, let's hope that that's a good thing, really. The story continues on page 4. Of course, the IGP ban of FSARS, among other things, are right there. My position as NGF chair, not to advance 2023 ambition, according to Fayemi. Find out the details of that on the
Not to
front page.
advance 2023
ambition.
There is an ambition.
Not to advance 2023
No,
ambition.
the statement before that says, my position.
As NGF chair, not to advance 2023 ambition.
Oh, that's really pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What you guys? That's the Daily Independent.
Yeah, there you go. And that is it as well. With a look at some of the dailies here today. We're back in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. Yesterday, the IGP did put up a release wherein they did go ahead to ban FSARS, as many know them as, but we'll eventually go ahead and see the breakdown of all of those. So what that then means is that well, what you might have been seeing previously on the road, chances are that they will change. Now, the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, FSAS, and other tactical squads of the force, the Special Tactical Squad, STS, Intelligence Response Team, IRT, Anti-Cultism Squad, and other tactical squads operating at the federal, zonal, and command levels, those that have been, of course, will be affected by this ban. So what this means is there will be no routine patrols and other conventional low-risk duties. There will be no stop and search duties, no checkpoints, no mounting of roadblocks, no traffic checks with immediate effect. It sounds like a dream, right? But that is the implication of that particular directive from the Office of the IGP coming through yesterday. So, joining us this morning to weigh into this matter, we've got two gentlemen, Mr. Fatai Owosheni, who is a former commissioner of police in Lagos. He was also in Benue and several other states, as well as also serving in the force headquarters. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. And okay, and beside him, we've got Atanibi Alamiha, who is a professor of criminology. Good morning, and thank you for joining us as well this morning.
Good morning.
Okay, let me start with Mr. Owosheni. Now, yes, as you may have seen with some of the headlines, many, as a matter of fact, when this broke yesterday, just felt, wait a minute, we've seen this sort of directive before. So the big question is this the way to go? What kind of import will this directive have?
Good morning, Prof, teachers, and good morning, the studio and viewers. I always start by saying it is not the best way to go. It is actually not the way to go. I think what the police leadership should do is to probably audit the internal oversight mechanism that is in place. All what is happening, it's because somehow the police had refused and failed to discharge the responsibilities in accordance with the extant rules and regulations. The so-called federal SARS, the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, they have rules and regulations that guide them. We've consistently failed to abide with this rule. And when measures like these are taken, nobody go back to audit those measures to see the level of compliance. Everybody now in all the so-called tactical units are not necessary. I've decided to wear T-shirts. It's either they put gallant or they put Mopol behind them. And you find out that the commanders at the state level don't bother to even check what these guys are doing. To the extent that once you see some bad-looking policemen on the road with T-shirts, everybody says it's SARS. SARS itself is not bad as it is portrayed. But you find out at the divisional level, DPOs have also formed all sort of units, and they wear those T-shirts. And once you see them on the road, everybody will say it's SARS. I will, summarize it as bring people into from the commissioner of police, the divisional police officers. The last time that these things became viral, the Office of the Vice President set up a committee. I'm aware that the Office of the National Security Advisor did the same thing. Measures were rolled out, but the complying units, the authorities, do they even bother to comply with this? In service, some of us, fought this on the need for the leadership not just to be creating all sort of units that don't add up. You see people that work in the PMF, in SARS, in whatever, they move from one unit to the other. It's circulating the violence. And above all, you also have a society that is now militarized. It is just all about violence. The special anti-robbery squad are supposed to work based on actionable intelligence, not just to go on the road. It is not done anywhere in the world where policemen will just stand on the road and be checking people's telephone. It is unacceptable. And then as long as the authority also, favor people that use extrajudicial means to carry out duty and tag them as super this, super that. You encourage all sort of things like that. To go to the federal SARS, to go to SARS, there is a condition that must have served for a period of years. But you now see a situation that a minted constable, a freshly passed out constable, is posted to SARS. A freshly passed out cadet is posted to SARS, is posted to Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Yes, I don't want to be blaming the members of the public as well, because the leadership, you would see them writing letters. IG, we want this one to be there, we want that one to be there. So the police authority must stand their ground to say that they want to work within the extant rules and regulations. This is the bane of all these things. It is not the best way. It's to audit the system and make sure that we keep to extant rules and regulations.
Okay, so quite a lot, packed in there. But let's switch to Professor Lemme and get his perspective on this particular directive. What do you think? What kind of impact do you think will it have?
Okay, let's just go back to who the police are. I always want to start by saying, ideally, police are human rights workers. They are established to protect all the fundamental rights that we have in Chapter 4 of our Constitution. Unfortunately, this is not the case always, because you have a minority of them who do not behave professionally. With respect to SARS, I'm happy at the beginning you listed about 5 different units, which members of the public generically call SARS. You have the SARS itself, you have the intelligence response team, you have the special tactical squad, you then have anti-cultism squad and police mobile force. Except for the police mobile force, these are supposed to be intelligence-led policing operations squads. They are not supposed to be visible. They are not supposed to be in daily contact with people. As Fatai Oseni said, the retired CP, these are people who ought to act on the basis of intelligence. So they go straight to their target and not hide on the highway doing what they are not supposed to do. But having said that, you also mentioned, I think rightly, that this kind of instruction had been given before. I know specifically when the present IG was appointed in January 2018. We were in the midst of the presidential panel of SARS, of which I was a member. And immediately he came, he took certain measures, trying, if you like, to domesticate this tactical unit, which previously were reporting to the force headquarters within the state command. And we did hope that that would have changed some of the problem that we have. But Chaplain, I think one of the problems we've had is what I call in our architecture, we are increasingly merging covert intelligent operation with overt operations. So you find those who are supposed to be non-active operators on the street with their badges and the rest of it. So there are a lot of confusion in the policing architecture in the country. Perhaps, speaking for the authorities, maybe the desperation to be seen to be doing something in the midst of high security led to
So,
the creation
Prof,
of all these.
if I could just jump in and ask this now, haven't seen this latest directive in consideration of the ones that have happened before. The big question is, what kind of impact will this have? Will it achieve the purpose for which it was announced?
Well, the previous one did not work, in part, as Owoseni said, because there's lack of supervision. I don't know whether there is going to be a new mechanism for supervising more effectively under the present regime. So basically, it's a matter of supervision. If you give people assignments, you don't supervise them, they will probably also give themselves, additional terms of reference. And I think that's what is happening. Police gave them its own terms of reference, but they have also added their own terms of reference, and nobody is holding them accountable. So,
Okay.
except there is an increasing supervision, nothing will change.
All right, Mr. Woshini, you have said, look, this will not necessarily achieve the purpose for which it was announced, and that the problem has to do with monitoring. So why then is it that, I mean, the police high command should know this? Why are they not doing it rather than keep announcing fresh directives when perhaps whenever there's a huge outcry?
That's just it. You have, just like Nigeria, you have all sort of laws that have not been enforced, that have not been implemented, that have not even been tried. So also is the institutions that we have now. Directives are issued out. Lead managers are not appointed to see how these things are implemented and enforced. And you have just a few number of some of the commissioners of police that don't even know what the duties of commissioners of police are. You have commissioners of police that just say, office home. And if you have such, all of you saw us in Lagos, we were all out there. Some commissioners of police don't even know that they have responsibility of all the police contingents in their state. Some of us stood to challenge it when an IG came, just like Prof had said, to put a junior officer to head the federal SARS and said all the SARS units should be reporting to them. I resisted it in Lagos. You must know what you have as your powers within the Constitution. Some of the commissioners of the police, sadly, and I'm sorry to say this, don't even know that they have such authorities. You have commissioners of police that are not ready to speak truth to the leadership. And of course, they don't also allow their junior officers, the DPOs, to also speak the truth to them. It's just all about using on from SARS. Once they move to hierarchy, from hierarchy, they go to anti-cultism. In Lagos, we said then, I don't want anti-cultism. In some of the states, I mean, your state now, they have all sort of units that are not necessary. The police regulation is there as a guide, but we've deviated from that. That is what the police leadership should sit down on, audit that internal oversight mechanism and know how they can implement it. We shouldn't have gotten to this level. And of course, while we're doing that, the society needs to be enlightened. The society is militarized. There's a culture of violence in Nigeria now. And that is another aspect of it. No policeman should be on the road. In fact, when the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Arase, was there, he designed uniform for these people so that you can, identify who is SARS, and they work on actionable intelligence. They will draw back to their office, not remaining on the road, but the divisional police officers, the commissioners of police in the different states are refused for one consideration or the other. If you've compromised your integrity with your DPOs, if the DPOs have compromised their integrity with their officers by creating antivirus and whatever, collecting money from them, we will not get it right. The leadership in Nigeria, the leadership of the police must take people to account for their real responsibilities. That is lack of supervision. That is dereliction of duty. The police leadership must take those officers into account for that.
Well, let me ask Prof this. Well, you and Mr. Osheni, Prof, you have listed a number of things, talked about monitoring, talked about supervision, and talked about the structures of the police system and all of that. Perhaps the issue here is really identifying why FSARS officers, four times banned, why they seem to continue in this particular trajectory of human rights violations and all of that we have seen. Prof, from where you stand, and your relationship with the police authorities over the years, what can you say is the root cause of this seemingly intractable activities of FSARs who have been banned and rebanned, structured and restructured, and yet the problem seems to remain? What do you think is the core problem?
I think two major problems. One is the increasing violence and crime in society. So there is a genuine demand for effective crime control. Unfortunately, from the police angle, it is believed that the solution to such situation is units like police mobile force and SARS. That's the first problem. The widespread crime in society and the police response in form of this kind of unit. The second point is much more technical. When there are problems like this, so solutions are then offered without studying the reasons for it. It's not knowledge driven. I give you an example. There was a time, I think, again, where the SARS was, the panel in 2018. Immediately, the acting president announced the need for SARS to be reformed. I recall under the former IG, by evening, reform was already announced without thinking through the complexity of what that means. So within 8 hours, a reform was announced by the former IG. That tells you that there is lack of understanding on how serious the problem was and still is. So I think the two problems is that the police have not taken time to step back and understand why is it repeatedly SARS has this kind of reputation. I'm not surprised. When you study police, we do know that a minority of officers are responsible for majority of misconduct. We also know that specific units, divisions, police stations tend to be notorious for atrocities, while majorities actually behave properly. But you need to be able to identify which unit of police are known for atrocities, which divisional stations and police stations are known for atrocities. So I think basically it's the tendency to act without thinking, without evidence, without trying to understand the complexity of the issues. So I think that those are the two major problems. And as long as we just think it's a question of issuing out regulations and rules without understanding what kind of people can do SARS work, what kind of people can do the RRT work, are they properly trained for it? Or once you are posted, you think what you need to succeed is actually a batch of the number of violence that committed or attributed to you. I think these are the challenges. Until we go back to that, whoever is posted to SARS is going to meet a structure in which even if it's not going to be a perpetrator, you have to acquiesce into a culture that already existed of brutality.
Huge questions. I mean, if you go on social media and look at what a lot of young people are saying, you'll understand their pain. But Mr. Owosheni, for a lot of people, they wonder, is there any part in the SOP or rules of engagement that says that those with a certain kind of car or a certain type of hairstyle, a certain type of dressing should be targeted? Is that anywhere in the SOP or the rules of engagement of the police or maybe some of these units? Please help us understand.
Nothing of such. Just like Prof had said, it's just a minority of people, the rogue police, that do that. There is nothing like that. And just like we've also said of nations, when you allow rule of law to come into play, things would be done in a civilized manner. For institutions like police, once you jettison the extant rules and regulations, the police regulations have the measures there. The various force administrative instructions have those things there. We've not been able to comply with all this. Just like I said, you cannot go to a CID in those days if you've not served up to 3 years in the police. But you see freshers going in there and no training, no retraining. The tools with which to work are not provided for them. When measures are rolled out, For example, it's not long ago that the IG said IRC should not create offices just like the previous IG said. Nobody had followed up to see that they comply with this. And you overcompensate violence. It's people that do extrajudicial means that even the press and the members of the public celebrate. Once you do that, the young officers will think that the way to go is to go and be killing people and be getting promotion. We must stop that. The standards are there.
Yeah.
As I've always
Pardon
said,
me, Mr. Wosheni, if I could just follow up on that. Are you referring to some of the functions or activities of, say, the IRT?
All those units that are created, there are regulations, extant rules under which they will work. But you have a situation that what determines who goes there now is about monetary thing. It is not based on what the regulations have said. Measures are there. You cannot go to IRC if you've not served for a period of year. You cannot go to SARS if you've not, even the CID generally. But you now see that these boys go there with violence. They are overcompensated. You refer to this as super power cop, super this and whatever. And the young officers think that is the way to go. The police must operate within the extant rules and regulations. It's been jettisoned. It must be posted based on professional knowledge, not on any other means. I mean, but here.
Okay, Mr. Wosheni, we're having a bit of a challenge with your connection. We lost some part, but while we try to reconnect, Prof. Now, the IGP's statement says that these men, these units and teams have been banned at the federal, the zonal, the command levels from conducting what they call stop and search duties, checkpoints, mounting of roadblocks, traffic checks, with immediate effect, implying that stopped yesterday. And a lot of people wonder, so what happens next, or what should happen next with those men? Is it enough to ban? Will those men, of course, they will continue some of their operations, just some of these operations that were banned. So what should happen with these men, especially the ones that have been, fingered to have compromised in their duties? What should happen with them, and what should be their mode of operation henceforth?
Well, thank you, Chaplain. I think basically part of the problem is that routine police work have been turned into specialized police work, and a huge proportion of the police officers are moved there. Checkpoint, very unnecessary. Patrol is far better than checkpoint. And so in modern civilized societies, you don't really want checkpoints, except for a very short time in order to do a particular operation. Maybe there is an emergency. So patrol is actually a better option than checkpoint. So many of those duties are routine police duties, which should not be carried out by a specialized tactical unit. That's the first thing we need to recognize. Unfortunately, because they are not supervised, these different units have been carrying out routine police duty. I think what to do again is, I'll go back to the question of supervision and accountability. I think it was one broadcaster on NTA those days who said on Sunday, say by 9 o'clock, do you know where your children are? The truth is, the police authorities at the federal, ready force headquarters, zonal, and command level, do they even know where their officers are? I doubt they do, if they know, because there isn't a good database. There is no good mechanism for monitoring which officer is where at what time, which vehicle is where at what time. So there is quite a lot that technology can do to begin to supervise people effectively. So there isn't either physical supervision nor technological monitoring of these officers. So what I suspect is that a lot of this will be carried out more or less illegally. And for members of the public, it's difficult to know when it is legal and illegal. And that's a challenge that we must face. And until the police, as an organization, comes out with very succinct rules, both understood by the police and the public, we may not get to the root of this problem. So there is need to go back, I think as Owosili said, to go back to the SOPs and then simplify them, and then in a way, make them known to the members of the public. And these too many different uniforms are also a problem.
All right, Prof. Just hang on a minute. We'll come back to both of you in just a moment. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. So, Mr. Wosheni, correct us if you're wrong. What you're saying is that if they really, or the police high command really want an impact or really want the complaints by Nigerians to be addressed, they need to ensure that they revisit all of those units, different kinds of units that have been set up in different police commands across the country, and scrap many of them that ought not to be there. Secondly, they need to ensure that they put in place a system of monitoring, because they've announced this kind of policies before and is being flouted because nobody is monitoring. Are those some of the key issues that you have raised, or else it will come across? If those things are not done, it will mean that, well, for want of words, they will just be playing to the gallery. That's the way it's coming across. Is that your point?
Absolutely. The internal oversight mechanism must be strengthened. People should not be posted into those offices like the provost, as we call it, for punitive reasons. It is when a commissioner of police misbehaves to say post him to provost. In the state, it is when policemen misbehave to say post them to provost. No, we must revisit that. There must be more emphasis on routine performance of routine police duties. It's so bad now that no policeman wants to work a bit. We have foot patrols, we have pin-down points. What they are interested is in wearing all manners of jackets and t-shirts to carry guns on the road. Nigerians are not animals. Nigerians are not criminals. Zonal AIGs, that is zonal offices that are created for supervisory purpose, administrative purpose. The AIGs compete with commissioners of police for operational duties now. It is wrong. It is not meant to be like that. Duties must be discharged within the context of extant rules and regulations, and we must bring people into account, up to the DPOs and whatever. We must also stop the proliferation of uniform. You just create one unit. Before you know it, they design a cap that are not known to our extant rules and regulations. And that is why everybody thinks, including people that are not policemen now, that are not from the police institutions, they'll just go and wear t-shirts, put gallants, put mopo. Some of them are not even in that. Divisional police officers must be told that they cannot create all sorts of units like antivirus and wear t-shirts.
But Mr. Wosheni, you know,
Commissioner of Police here in the
let me ask.
We went right.
Pardon me for that. Now, the FSARs, the federal SARs, yes, they are the federal level, but we also do have the ones in states, which the police commissioners are supposed to supervise. Now, what is going on in that regard? Why is it that the CPs can't seem to rein them in, even DPOs? What's going on? Why is it that lax?
Because those commissioners of police don't know their powers under the Constitution. It's one of the things that made some of us run into trouble with leadership. When a chief superintendent of police was made to head SARS by one inspector general of police, and they said everybody must report to force headquarters. We reminded them of the Constitution that the police commissioner in the command has the responsibility for oversight mechanism of all the police constituents in the state. No Assistant Inspector General of Police in the zone should take the operational duties of the command commissioners of police. It's a constitutional thing. And all sort of uniforms that the police are wearing now, they are not known to the first order. We have a dress code. Everybody just wear all sort of caps, all sort of shoes, all those things. We must stop that. We must re-educate our people. And well-meaning Nigerians must also help in reducing the violence in the society now. Because where you have situations that people call you to say that area boys are fighting. You get there, they throw stones. Some of them use locally made pistols to fire at police. So you now see members of the public saying, oh, don't send those policemen in black and black. Oh, we want Mopo, we want SARS. No, this is not the way to go about it. So the police leadership has the authority to go back into the extant rules and regulations. There are enough there to guide all these abuses. We should stop setting up panels and reeling out measures that we don't enforce, just like we create all sort of laws. All this proliferation must stop. There's no need. There's somebody said, "Poor father." The same thing we said about community policing. Someone came and said that the institutional memories must be employed when doing these things. And once you do that, you work within the extant rules and regulations, just like nations must be run under the rule of law. All these things will come into place. The police leadership has a responsibility to ensure that the internal oversight mechanism is strengthened. That's my point.
All right. Well, Prof, you just mentioned that you were part of that panel that reviewed some of the activities of this unit that we're talking about. But you know, some of the accusations that have come against them over the years have included extortion. You know, they arrest people just because they want to make sure that they collect money from them, among several other things. So I don't know, please give us information if indeed your panel reviewed some of those activities, and what were the punitive measures, if any, for any of the people that must have been found wanting at that point. What were the things that they were told? What were the disciplinary activities or actions given to them, if any, that could have stopped them? Otherwise, it would seem like, you know, none of the activities of that panel made any specific or deliberate impact on what we have now.
Thank you. The panel work was very thorough because it invoked the instrument setting up Human Rights Commission. And the executive secretary of the Human Rights Commission was the chairman of the panel. And the report of the panel came in different sections. There were those who were recommended for internal police administrative sanctions. There were those who were recommended for prosecution. There were those people who were also recommended to be further investigated. Talking about extortion, it was quite troubling when we discovered in the course of the work of the panel that members of, again, we're using SARS as a generic term, but the tactical squad, the intelligence response team, particularly along with SARS, they come to you and said, we had information that the car you are riding was stolen. The car is taken from you. And then, of course, before you know it, 6 months later or 3 months later on, you'll find that the officers were riding your car in your neighborhood. We actually find a number of those kind of instances. Recently, the last time I spoke with the executive secretary of National Human Rights Commission, there was a man, actually the chief magistrate in Benue, whose matrix given to the wife was seized. 2 years on, we couldn't find the matrix. They said that Assistant Commissioner of Police had actually bought that matrix and it was auctioned. So there were a lot that were found by the panel. There were some which were able to solve immediately. I think about 2 people got their vehicle back. Even in Lagos, also were able to return vehicles to some people have been deprived of their vehicle by this team. So it is really bad. But like I said, a few of them, and those few are really, really, really bad. They had no remorse. They were arrogant, even with extrajudicial killing. But as it is said, one of the things that we are still talking about FSARS. When I saw FSARS yesterday, I was a little bit concerned because the directive given in January 2019 or 2018, when the present IG came into power, was that there should be no SARS that will not report to the state command. So they were taking, all of them were supposed to be embedded in state command and under the supervision of the state police command. If you do that, then of course the instruction yesterday said the right thing, that the zonal commander, the zonal AIGs, the state police commissioner will be held accountable. The IG does not need to go to a state and begin to ask what is going on. If you hear that something happened in Osun, there is a zonal IG, they are holding him accountable for that occurrence. The zonal AIG will hold the command the commissioner of police in Osun responsible. And I think that's what they need to tidy up in terms of supervision.
But Prof, just one moment. Just one moment, Prof. This issue that you just brought up now, I think perhaps it also underscores one of the issues that many people have been raising about the policing system in the first place, which is the fact that it is too over-centralized. So does this in any way then suggest that maybe if we structured the police system into 36, give each one of them autonomy, and then the authorities at that level will be able to do essentially, validating this whole campaign about state police. Do you think that will solve the problem largely?
I'm not too sure. I think there are issues of norms, values that are involved. Because if you look at the state institution, that is institution that operate at the state level, are they really more accountable than those of the federal? So it's a more fundamental problem about our attitude, about our values, about our, value of accountability, value of service, and the rest of it. I think there are already mechanisms by which, if they are effective, there should be that level of discipline. Just take an example. Every senior police officer in the Nigeria police force are not likely to get away with misconduct as much as the junior officers. And the difference is that there is a relative database. You have some database for senior officers, but there is just no database for junior officers to do. So they do whatever they want, and then they get transferred with the bad conduct. Nobody's aware, they record, and they continue to get promoted. So we're dealing with more fundamental issue about, first, who gets into this unit, as Owoseni had said. The second thing is, when they are unit, who supervises them? Then thirdly, what are the consequences? I'm not aware that the panel of SARS, the report has been substantially implemented. And so it is not the punishment, the severity of the punishment, but the certainty that people will be punished for their misconduct that make people behave. So we are dealing with a lot of challenges. Of course, police are very important. They carry out power, but they are not fundamentally different from the kind of misconduct that has become widespread in our society.
Right. Mr. Owoseni, the demand from a lot of Nigerians is simple. They say, end SARS now. Now, we got a ban. And the question they're asking is it possible to end SARS? Because that's the demand, that's the trend, that's what people are calling for. So is that reasonable in the context of, one, the security challenges we have in the country, the fact that, we keep saying that we need more hands. So is it feasible to end SARS now?
I think it's not as if it's about ending SARS. If you say end SARS, you can as well say, ask the Nigeria police to fold up. It is about the police, coming out to educate the people. What is the difference between SARS and other units? Prof had said it. There is the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad. We shouldn't have any unit in any command because they have SARS in those commands. It's the issue of the Nigerian police coming up to really educate the people what the whole of these things is all about. Even when panels are set up, you find out that the police is not well represented. They just send some officers that don't even have the knowledge of what is being discussed. The prophet said it. Some measures were taken. People were said to be punished. People were asked to be dismissed. And you find a situation that even when these recommendations are made, when officers are punished, they are brought back into the system through all kind of political interference and faulty judicial process, because when the police is taken to court, they are not represented. And the Police Service Commission will now come up to say, this officer has gotten judgment. It is sad. I'm afraid. You have quite a lot of criminals who have been found guilty being returned back to the police by the Police Service Commission through all these faulty judicial processes or political interference. The police leadership must sit down and do an audit of internal oversight mechanism. There must be a kind of working together with the Police Service Commission to ensure that officers that are dismissed, that are jailed, don't come back into the system. Political interference must be stopped. Late Agui Rossi said that in 1957 as part of the introductory report to the Wheeling Commission. Police should not be under any political interference. The police leadership must resolve to work within the ambit of extant rules and regulations. This has been neglected. We must not overcompensate people that use extrajudicial means. You can't say because someone had killed another person when you didn't even investigate the person that is killed, whether it's an armed robber or whatever. Prof had said it. Some of the vehicles that were recovered would later be sold under one form of auction or the other. And of course, you, the media people too, you celebrate them. The members of the public celebrate them. No, there are, honest professional officers that are doing their work based on extant rules and regulations, using knowledge-driven approach to carry out their work. It is those ones that are just on the road doing all sorts of things that we celebrate. Let us go back to extant rules and regulations, just like nations are preaching. Ensure that the rule of law comes to play. Once the leadership of the police resolve that they will work within the extant rules and regulation, we get it right. Once they don't post people based on punitive to the, when someone has misbehaved and you post him to go and do internal oversight, what do you expect?
All right, but now that this directive has been put out there by the police, the IGP, well, this morning on the way to work, I still saw some police personnel on the roads, but they were not stopping cars as they used to before today. Now, chances are that tomorrow, just as you've highlighted, if no one monitors, they may get back to doing the same things that they've been doing before. What would you advise Nigerians? How should they conduct themselves? Because chances are that as a result of this announcement, you may find motorists who the police authority may stop on the roads who is with a gun, and then someone is arguing with somebody with a gun, and who knows, anything could happen if it's in the dead of the night. How would you advise, Nigerians conduct themselves if they happen to see one person or so on the roads, as it were?
Okay.
Let Mr. Oshene address it first. I'll come to you later, Prof. Pardon me.
Okay.
Mr. Oshene, go ahead. That's for you.
What I would expect Nigerians to do is that if they see people wielding guns on the road and are not in proper police uniform, they should be careful, play along, and find a way of getting the information across to the police leadership. What we should expect now are police observatories, pin down points, where you park your vehicle by the side, remain there in uniform. It has been said repeatedly, people should not be on the road in T-shirts without uniform. That is why the former Inspector General of Police designed a uniform for SARS, that we know that this is SARS. Once you are not in proper police uniform, you shouldn't be on the road. Even then, it is not road blockages that reduce crimes. It increases extortion. What people should do is to create, commissioners of police should create observatories. Park your vehicle by the side. If there is need to get onto the road based on maybe a distress call, it will be done, within that period, and you will drop back to your vehicles. We should use observatories and pin down points. And once members of the public say that, because of the fear, just be tactical, play along, find a way of getting messages to the police leadership that this is what we've noticed. No argument, nothing. And I think that will help us.
Just before we get Prof's response to that, you mentioned that roadblocks only increase extortion. And in fact, it doesn't reduce crime. And one wonders, quickly, what is responsible for that extortion? Is it the fact that policemen are underpaid or welfare is not good enough? Why is extortion something that some policemen resort to from time to time?
You see, unfortunately for the Nigeria police, because of the bad names that we've hand for ourselves. Extortion, it's all over the country. Why you talk about the police zone is that police is in every nook and cranny, and they deal with the lowest level of the populace that will probably say it out of the highest level. But for the police, funding is part of the problem. To give a patrol, gives a police divisional officer to go and carry out police duties with 30,000 naira for 3 months. They must fuel the vehicle, they must replace the tires. So the police, we need to sit down and agree whether we even want to have a police. To me, I would probably say we are not ready to have a police.
Yeah, but Mr. Osheni, is it true? Is it true that in some cases, when you see those roadblocks or those checkpoints and then they're extorting people, it's either the DPO in that area or the CP has allowed that and then they make returns to them?
Some DPOs and some commissioners of police will probably do that, which is unacceptable. But then it is what it is. It has to be stopped. If the commissioners of police would post DPOs based on a return, if the force headquarters will post commissioners of police to state command based on what it can give some people in force headquarters, and it's not a well thought out thing that you look at professionalism, competence, and all those things, you will find that we must accept. I've said before, we must accept that somehow, because we overlook certain things, we don't keep to our rules and regulations, some of these things do happen. But it's not as if it is that bad. It can.
All right. So, Prof, in your case, I mean, as a criminologist, would it be, how will civilians, Nigerians, conduct themselves?
Even when police deploy, people going to be on the road.
Okay. Pardon me, Mr. Osheni. Let me bring in Prof at this time. My apologies. Well, Prof, talk to us. I mean, what would you recommend the criminal mindset as a criminologist, a professor at that? How should we, move on with this?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is for police not to keep trying to stay, stumbling all over and over again. I think it needs to take stock. It needs really to step back and take stock of the values that have been added by this unit. I think they need to retrain the larger proportion of the police to do routine police work. The very special cases that special units are expected to carry out, they are not a very large segment of police work. And so we don't need this large number of police officers in this specialized unit. They need to be well trained. They need, in fact, to have the necessary gadget to work with, but they don't need to be as large as they are. And they also to be response teams. I think what has happened, they have become the first responder, where they are supposed to be actually responding to the first responder. And I think that's the challenge that the police have. So they need to step back and look at what benefit have we derived from roadblocks? How much crime have been stopped? How much has it assured people of their safety? How has it lessened the fear of crime? They need to assess these values and then discover which one they need to retain, they need to retrain.
Okay, well, we have to thank you both for talking to us today. Professor Etanibi Alemika, criminologist, the professor of criminology, and then Mr. Fatai Owosheni, former commissioner of police in Lagos, Benue. Thank you both for your time today.
Thanks so much.
All right, well, the police force Public Relations Department did put up feedback numbers. You can get across to them if you see anything going on anywhere at any point in time. So we'll try and see how we can get them across to you, such that if you see anything, you could always get across to them. But we will be back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Well, turning our attention now to economic matters. The economic sustainability plan specifically of the government, there are many who have a thing or two about it. Well, yes, they plan to inject some 2.3 trillion naira into the economy in a year. Well, many just wondering the strategy, how they plan to do all of that. But there are different components as housing and several others. So as you may see in that slide there, that's the proposal, what they intend to do. But joining us now, we've got Sani Yakubu, who is the Chief Investment Officer of Family Homes Fund, a government agency that armed to also play a role with that ESP. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We know that when we speak about housing...
Good morning.
Okay, there's a huge gap, the housing deficit that Nigeria has got to meet for its people. Look, yes, my colleagues can always remind us about the housing plans we've had in 2000 and several rolling plans we had. Now, what is your agency doing to meet up with this? What? How many homes are you providing now? What's the target?
The Economic Sustainability Plan has a target of 300,000 houses across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT as well. And I like the way you start this conversation by making reference to the challenges that we've experienced almost since independence with regards to the housing shortages. This is not just a Nigerian problem, it is also a very serious global situation, because over the last couple of years, globally, we see that the cities and the rate of urbanization has been such that more and more people are living in urban areas than rural areas. And so this has caused, a push on the availability of housing.
The challenge right now is not the plan, the challenge is the execution. And just as you highlighted, it's something that we've been talking about for a very long time. Yes, it may be a global problem, but for as long as it is a peculiar Nigerian problem, we would like to talk about it. So it is something that is going to be happening in every state of the country, as you have said. What's the conversation with the state governments on this project? Because we understand from the plan that there are supposed to be conversations with state governments so that we can deliver this over the next 12 months. Has that conversation with state governments begun? And how far so far?
Well, I'll take your question in two parts. And the first part is, what's so special about this plan? First, we need to avert our minds to the fact that we're looking to do homes or housing, not for all category of Nigerians, but to address those Nigerians that have the greatest need for housing or for housing solutions. So we're looking to do low income, or what you may want to call social housing. Now, what has been the biggest challenge for housing generally? The biggest challenge has been in terms of infrastructure provision and in terms of the cost of funds for doing the homes themselves, if we'll put it that way. Now, what has happened in this specific plan is that one of the factors has been addressed, and then the second factor we've worked around. So the Economic Sustainability Plan has provided, through the Central Bank of Nigeria and with the support of the Ministry of Finance, an envelope to ensure that the takeoff for the 300,000 target happens smoothly. Now, how would we say that we've worked around the factor of infrastructure? Now, that is where the connection to the stakeholders is very key. If we find land in places that have already gotten infrastructure, and if we can get this land free, and these are two factors that the state governments can provide. And these are two elements that cooperatives and organized groups can help in providing. If we can address these two factors, then we will substantially reduce the cost of providing housing. We can't deal with this problem in such a way that it just disappears, but we can vastly improve the situation, which is what I think that everyone will try to do if there is a tough and difficult situation, such as providing housing.
Okay.
At the start of the conversation, we talked about the quantum of housing that needs to be provided. And numbers have been bandied around from 17 to, in some cases, 21 million. And this is a very large number.
Right.
And to find a capital to do this all at once will be very difficult. To provide the infrastructure that is necessary to support all of this at once will be very difficult. But we can work on it step by step, stage by stage.
Now to get a sense of how much a role you will play in this plan, I mean, this stimulus package that is being introduced, we probably need to look back at what you have achieved, what you have done. You started operations in 2018, if I'm correct, and the plan was to invest about 1.3 trillion or 1.5 trillion in the sector, provide 500,000 homes and 1,500,000 jobs over the next 4 years. 2 years have since passed, and the question is, how much of that target have you hit? If we're going to say you play a huge role in this economic sustainability plan, how much have you been able to even add to the economy in the space of the 2 years of your operations?
That's a very good question. So we talk the talk, walk the walk as well. Between 2018 and now, with all the COVID challenges and other difficulties of operating the Nigerian environment, we're proud to say that we have, at this point in time, over 10,000 housing units almost delivered. Now, you might think that this is not such a big number when you consider the total need of Nigeria as a whole. But when you look at the history of housing delivery in Nigeria, and I say this with all due respect to all the players in the past, when you look at the number that we've delivered between 2018 and now, 10,000 housing units, you will agree with me that this is quite an effort.
So, who are you providing this for? Formal poor, informal poor? What's the yardstick for? How do people qualify to get it?
Now, at this point, I think it's very critical to explain here that Family Homes Funds has its own products and services that it was set up to deliver. Now, in addition to its own products, which include affordable housing, and under affordable housing, what we're looking to do is to address the funding requirements of key players in the area of affordable housing. So housing finance, to be very specific. We're also, under our own products, if I may put it that way, delivering on rent-to-own, help-to-own. These are two products that are similar. And I'm sure when you look at products such as rent-to-own, you will agree with me that for a large population like us, if we are to create sizable dents in the housing problem, rent-to-own is going to be an area that must be addressed. And a fourth product, which we have, is also land and infrastructure development. Now, aside from these four products, we have the National Social Housing Program. Now, it's the National Social Housing Program that has a specific funding envelope from the Economic Sustainability Plan. And the plan is such that the CBN is providing the funding and the Ministry of Finance is providing a guarantee. So that this time around, the mandate is to ensure that the funding actually gets returned or can be revolved, such that it's not just a national cake for sharing. It has to be built around a plan that ensures that the funding returns or is recovered.
So how is this fundamentally different from the federal mortgage housing plan?
The Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is a very, very critical senior partner in housing delivery in Nigeria. This plan is structured in such a way that Family Homes Funds, which is the fund manager and the program delivery agency, provides the stock of housing. It works with strategic partners across the country, such as SME delivery partners, project managers, essentially those members of the public that enable us to take advantage of the creation of employment using housing delivery. These will have a great role to play in what we're doing for the production aspect. Now, you will also see that the Nigerian housing sector essentially has two key problems. It has an issue with delivery, that is housing stock production. It also has an issue with affordability.
Right.
So we don't have enough stock of houses, but we also do not have enough capacity to buy, acquire, or take a mortgage on these houses. So the Federal Mortgage Bank is operating under this plan as a sort of Fund 2. Now, this Fund 2 will ensure that Nigerians that...
Right. Let me just butt in now. I'd like us to expand the conversation. Yes, you have talked about the housing component, but we've since been joined by Mr. Olusegun Oshinawa, the former Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, that's NECA, is also the Chair Policy and Strategy Team of NC Front, that's the National Consultative Front. Well, the connection just failed us right now. So let's come back to this conversation about housing just before we get Mr. Oshinawa on board. Now, you were talking about the shortfall, and that caught my attention. So the plan is 500,000 houses in 4 years, right? That was a plan you set out to achieve in 2018. You say you have achieved 10,000. So by my calculation, there's 490,000 units of houses to be delivered in the next 2 years, if we're still staying with that projection. So have you moved that forward? Is that achievable in 2 years, or what exactly is going on with that?
It's good to answer that question, but I'd like to just conclude the line of thought that that I was delivering on before you asked that question, which is that the Federal Mortgage Bank will be acting as a Fund 2 and will improve affordability on the part of Nigerians. Now, back to your question. The target of 500,000 houses is an enviable one, but we all do agree that it is a target that was designed to make us work hard, or harder, as it were. As much as we have resources, as much as we have the leverage, we will work on achieving this target, this objective. The Federal Ministry of Finance and the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the NSIA, are the two key shareholders of our company, which is, as you would see, is a government-run agency. Now, as much as we can get from our shareholders, as much as we can get from the government, we are deploying as quickly as we can. Now, we know that we may not be able to completely resolve the problem within this time period, but we will try our best to ensure that we ramp up the solution, that we improve what the situation is continuously. The national budget is not sufficient to resolve all the issues. And so we're also involving the private sector. We're working also in the capital market. At the moment, we're looking at doing a Sukuk bond so that we can add to our capital base and improve our performance.
Well, much as this is supposed to be for a year, you didn't give us the second part. What happens if within 1 year you're not able to meet up with some of these targets?
Well, take a look at the 300,000 target. And the 300,000 target is a national social housing program. This national social housing program is targeting 2 to 3 million naira delivery per house. And our plans are set in place. We are starting with a demonstration property at Day here in Abuja. After that, we have an understanding. We've signed an MOU with the Nigerian Police Force Construction Company for 1,000 houses in the same location. Immediately afterwards, in fact, almost, I would say, contiguously, we would be doing the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. We've already identified at least 2 locations in each of the 6 geopolitical zones. This is the target for the 300,000 houses. Now, I'm sure you'll agree with me that by the time we do the 300,000 houses, we would have come close to achieving our target. Now, what is the secret in delivering these 300,000 houses? First, we want to make sure that we have a simple and uncomplicated plan, which is to do 2-room apartments, or what the Nigerian will call a 1-bedroom.
Okay.
And a 3-room apartment, which is what you may call a 2-bedroom. And we want to put these houses in places or locations that already have infrastructure. And that's how we're looking at 2 million. We're looking at 2.7. And if we do the 3 bedrooms, we'll be looking at 3.25 million. The CBN is providing an envelope of 200 billion, which I know has hit the press already. The CBN is providing this envelope to enable us meet with the 300,000 social housing target. Now, when you add,
just a moment.
When you add, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there. Gentlemen, I'll be there. Yes.
But time will not let you go there as soon as possible.
To the rest of the other work that we're doing, you would see that we have substantially come to a point where...
We know that the strategy for housing delivery globally changes from time to time. Let's bring in Ezekiel Nyaitok. He is in that field as well. So to give us his perspective on this plan, this ESP, the housing component of this plan. Good morning and thank you for joining us today. Well, having listened to the government's plan for this 300,000 housing units, what do you think of the sustainability or achieving this plan?
What do you think of Thanks for having me. First, I want to, there's a song, I hope you're hearing me well. Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for having me, Chamberlain. First, I want to thank the federal government for the effort to look into social housing. But I think that we must understand that low-cost housing has been disbanded, abolished globally as a colossal failure. Low-cost housing has been abolished, and I use that word instructively, globally as failure. Nobody goes on low-cost housing. Rather, came up with social housing. And the difference is social housing. Mr. President lives in social housing. Your governors live in social housing. Social housing dies not. So you make it available to the people through subsidizing standard houses, because low-cost housing had become slums. Or how do you hope to build a 2-bedroom bungalow with 2 million? That's going to be difficult. Ask a contractor to quote a standard building. Even the Ministry of Housing, their 3-bedroom is built for about 10 people. and they're not going to tell Nigerians that they are wasting their money. Now, you hope to build houses, 3 bedrooms for less than 3 million. I have been in housing for all of my life. I've been one of the greatest advocates for housing delivery in Nigeria. I've been on this for over 30 years, and I speak as an informed person. I think that this money is good if they are bringing out 2 to 300 billion. Amazing, but let them not go on this issue of cheap housing. It is not sustainable, it is not doable, and they're just going to end up in a policy that will just fizzle out with this administration. But they can do something sustainable. You don't need to build 20,000 houses, 50,000 houses. If you can afford to build 10,000, 5,000 sustainable housing, Shagari housing, they were not just all over the place, but the name is there till today. If this administration wants to retain something that lasts long after they are gone, let them do what is standard and not what is popular. That is my simple advice to them. Amazing initiative. I thank the government for it. But please, let the policy and let them set up what they call the social landlords, people who are going to be specialized in delivering social housing. And then let them look at the sustainability. Can the poor live alone? Who is going to keep maintaining the infrastructure? Should they do mixed development such that you do cut and join? You take from the rich and subsidize the poor. That is more sustainable. So please let this good idea be matched with sustainable platforms.
All right, then let's get Mr. Sani to respond as we wind down. So what do you think of his approach now? Because he's been in this, he's done it, as a matter of fact.
I appreciate my brother Etuk's comments. And these are very good ideas. However, we need to think in terms of resolving the peculiar Nigerian situation. That's the first point. The second point is that the program we're working on is actually a social housing program. And by ensuring that we find locations that have infrastructure, that we find locations that have already reduced the cost of production, we're putting in place houses that have to a large extent been subsidized. Remember that the funding component is also coming from government at a very low interest rate. And if pure market situations were to apply, the property that we're looking at for 2 million, for 2.75 or for 3.25 will not actually be affordable. And I do understand that there are certain challenges in providing low-cost housing. Now, in our own case, what we have is a very dire need where people are living in very squalid conditions. Are we going to adopt global practice and then continue with the situation where many of the people are living in these squalid conditions continuously over long periods of time?
In other words, you're saying you're disregarding global practices?
We're not disregarding global practices, but we're also customizing them to suit what is peculiarly, if I would use such a phrase, Nigerian. We are dealing with infrastructure shortages. We're dealing with cost of funds. We're dealing with the need to customize the designs to suit customs and traditions in different parts of the country. We're dealing with parts of the country where land is extremely difficult to come by. Yeah, and you need to find a solution for those that require social housing in all of this.
Yeah, but he was speaking in that context
the way it is.
He was speaking in that context as well.
You can apply the global best practice in all the situations that suit it. Where there are extreme challenges, you need to tweak, you need to adjust.
All right.
And if you look at this plan,
I'm afraid that is where we have to anchor. Mr. Sani Yakubu, Chief Investment Officer, we do thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Well, this is a conversation that, of course, we'll keep talking about as we progress. Well, there you go. Some of the challenges about provision of those houses, Mr. Etok was talking about, look at what has happened before. And so if you want to adopt certain measures, you may just change your strategy. But that is the show today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain also.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day and please keep safe.